So, it's the start of the tax year, and PhysicWhip are really keen to help you get off to a flying start in April 2025. So, we are offering to cover your entire VAT on any technology purchased in this time, so the whole 20%. The reason we're doing this is because there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, a lot of uncertainty in the markets, and this can mean that people do hesitate or not want to spend money. However, we know that if you want this technology, the sooner you can get it in, the sooner it's going to be beneficial for you, for your clients and the business. So we want to help build that momentum. It helps us as well keep moving things forward. We're already placing large orders and we'd love to kick things off. So please get in touch. We'll cover all of your VAT for any order purchased in April 25 and we'd love to help you. Richmond Stace is he's quite a unique character in the industry. He's officially a chronic pain specialist, consulting with various different sports teams, clinics, as well as having his own practice based in London. He is a really interesting and thoughtful guy, and I love spending time with him because he's all about treating the client rather than the condition, and really understanding, communicating, listening, empathising with whoever is sat in front of him, whether it's a patient, whether it's me, and it's a really fascinating approach. So we had a good chat here talking about all those subjects, pain, communication, and I found it really fascinating. So I hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Sean, good to see you. Thank you for welcoming me to the inner sanctum of Welsh football.
No problem.
So you've got international week next week. So what do you have to do in prep for that?
Mainly touching base with the clubs and the players that are in the squad. Update on injury status and finding out where they're at, what they've been doing pre-season wise, anything new, anything I need to be aware of. Updating their kind of UEFA medical regulations, screening. So this is kind of a minimum standard that UEFA expect that the players you've got to be able to produce. So that's cardiac screening, concussion screening. So it's just collecting that information off the clubs and making sure we're all ready to go when the players turn up next Sunday, and we're all ready to go.
Very good. And you've had some incredible times in the Welsh setup recently. You saw some incredible players. So what's it like going to these international tournaments? Certainly when you've got you're doing really well in these tournaments.
Yeah, I think 2016 was special. I've been fortunate to have been in this game 30 years, as you know, as a player, and then obviously on the medical side. But I think 2016 stood out for anything that I've achieved as a player or as a physio. I think we were extremely lucky. We had a good set of players, some extremely talented players, but more, I think we collectively, there was an atmosphere, there was a culture around that team. Chris Coleman had created something special, and we had what was an unbelievable time. Amazing. Difficult to explain what. Was there anything specific? Actually, everything about it. It was, for Wales, the first time they qualified for a major tournament for over 50 years. But where we were staying in France, just everything clicked at the right time. The players. It was just special, and it was one of them times when actually I wanted to be a fan. You saw the times that people were having back in Wales, and I think it was kind of after I think everybody struggled. We'd had 6 or 7 weeks away together, but yeah, just special times.
So talk me through your emotions when you see that Cruyff turn and slotting the ball in. What was going through your head then?
Where's he got that from? I'd never seen him do it before. Now, listen, again, it was just iconic moment for Welsh football. That turn, just everything about it. It was, from from Joe Ledley's pass in the first game, because in the lead up into that, he'd obviously had an injury that we thought he weren't going to make it, and then so there was lots of different reasons why that tournament was special.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just great. any tournament. And like we said, we've been fortunate to qualify for Euros in 2020, and then obviously the World Cup in 2022, on the back of all the prep work and everything that had been done years building into that. So it wasn't something that had just happened. There'd been a lot of planning behind that. Going back as far as when Gary Speed was in charge, and he'd come in and he had a vision on how he wanted to take that things forward. And proof's in the pudding that what he wanted to do worked. Chris took that on with a group of players, and it was fantastic. It was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was amazing to watch, and there always seems to be just a much better vibe from like the press, the team for like England compared to say like a Wales or maybe not Scotland just gone. But like, what's your perspective on? There seems to be a real togetherness.
Listen, I think I've not been inside the England camp, but I'm sure that they are, and they're professionals. I think the hype around the England team, they're always expected to win. Nobody expected Wales to do anything, and I think when it happened, I think everybody was surprised. But then they wanted to know why. What was the success? Why did we go on and do so well? What had we created? And I've said all along, you don't have to have the everything in place. Sometimes it's about the lads, the group, the culture, everything around it. It's not just the football. It's what you create. You can have the best players in the world. You can have 11 Messis if you want, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to win. But we had something special, and the players produced as well. And we had, we came against Belgium. You look at the Belgian team, the Russians. We had some fantastic opposition, but on the day we had something special. Brilliant.
Yeah. And then you like talk about the team. The fact is, you've got certainly one of the biggest players, one of the best players in British history, arguably the best player, Gareth Bale. How do they merge into that team of that?
I've been fortunate to work with Gareth for a number of years in the international setup, and it was never a problem. Gareth loved being coming back home, coming back to Wales. There wasn't a prouder man than putting a Wales shirt on, and he would do everything to be on camp and play for his country. And he fitted in. He enjoyed the atmosphere, everything about coming back to Wales. So it wasn't, it was never an issue.
Yeah. And you've got a new manager here now, Craig Bellamy, also a big name.
Yeah, obviously I've worked with Craig as a player, the ultimate professional. I tell everybody that, as a player, he didn't accept anything other than the best from everybody around him. I'm sure he's going to be the same as a manager. And, interesting, again, it's going to be interesting times. It would be interesting to see what he brings as a manager. I only know him as a player. I've not seen him coach, so I think that's going to be great. And again, us as the medical team are just going to be there to support what he needs and see what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've seen as well as I'm going into teams on a weekly basis, and you do sense sometimes, or more than sense, that there's a dynamic within the place where you've got different silos of sports science, medical, those sort of things. What's your perspective on there can be sometimes the culture doesn't always seem as healthy as it should be?
It's a difficult one. I think we all realise that the game's grown significantly over this last 10 or 15 years, and the growth's not just been off the field from a commercial aspect and the money in the game from Sky and everything else, but it's come from the technical team. The medical teams are bigger than ever. The sports science teams are bigger than ever. So all of a sudden you're managing and obviously the technical team, but you're managing lots of people on the ground. And sometimes that, there's different cultures, there's different way of thinking. And from working in them environments, it can be difficult because you've got people with different ideas. There's lots of people that have got their ideas. And so it's trying to build culture within a club or within an international setup that fits around what everybody's beliefs are, and that's key. Sometimes it can be difficult because we don't always have to agree on what's best. But again, we've got to find that collective pathway where we can all agree to disagree. And I think it's important that we do disagree on certain things. But again, ultimately, it falls down on the manager to get as much information as he can to be able to make the right decision. And that sometimes in the teams that are successful will work better than probably what it does at teams that don't, and that they have the factions. But it is difficult, particularly with that many people around that are involved in the game these days.
And in terms of the teams have grown absolutely massively, like chatting with Gary Lewin, he was saying they had a backroom team, not just him as a medical side. They had 4 people, including the manager, when they won the league at Anfield. And now you'll have a massive setup just for the medical side.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on, a difficult question, but the ideal size? Like, has it gone too big?
I don't say it's gone too big. I think, and I'm very pro having as big a medical team as possible, because you're looking after the players, and ultimately the players will determine how successful the franchise is. And use the analogies that, you know, if you're a Ferrari, you've got to look after it. And I'm a big believer in that. We need the medical staff, the sports science, and the S&C guys, that we can put everything we can into that athlete and give them the best that we can, that's available. So back in the days, one person is not enough. You can't look after a team with small numbers, 2 or 3 medical people and 1 performance guy and 1 sports science guy. You need numbers. And again, but that comes down to resources, and the bigger clubs have got the resources to be able to deliver them big teams. But for me, you know, you can't have a big enough medical team. And I realise as well that these days that these modern players have got their own backroom staff when they walk away from the club. You know, a lot of these players have got their own soft tissue therapists, or even physios, or people that they go and see and trust. And that's the difficulty, I think, in the modern game, is managing, not only managing the players at the clubs and what you do from a day to day, but also managing what they get on the outside. And that can be a challenge.
Yeah, and you do hear of people going off to various different places, whether it's from the management or from other players. And how do you cope with that sort of thing?
I think, personally, I think you'd be foolish to try and ignore it. I think you've got to understand. I think you've got a better chance of working with these people and bringing them in and saying, well, listen, how can we? Because collectively they want the best thing for their player, and the club and the medical team want the best thing for the player. That's not up for question. But what you've got to try and do is match and kind of build a bigger picture of what that player's doing, outside the club, inside the club, and how you can incorporate everything into ensuring that they deliver on a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday evening, whatever it is these days. And that is difficult. I think that's really difficult. But that's the job that you've got to do, is manage everything around that player these days.
And have you seen the player personality or that shift over there? You said you've been in it 30 years. So as a player, how has that changed?
I think the modern game is, like you said, you've got, particularly from when I was playing, you've got an influx into the game of foreign players, internationals from different countries, you know, from all over the world. That's the power of the English, or the game in England, the system, even down to the, you know, first and second divisions. You've got foreign players playing in there. I think that the standard within the game within the UK is phenomenal, but it's just changed. I think revenue from television has changed the climate within the game in the UK, made the clubs really powerful, and that they can attract the better players, because ultimately it's the best league in the world, and people want to buy that. It's commercially it's unbelievable. It's massive. But again, it's managing these. You look at the size of these clubs these days, is that they've got, you know, the team behind the team. You've got the technical team in the training ground, but the clubs themselves have just grown exponentially. They're massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, but you know, the game's moved on. It's faster. You've got to be stronger. You've got to, you know, it's certainly moved on. It's a different game than what it was 10, 15 years ago.
I've seen some articles saying that the players may be too muscular. Like, what are your thoughts on the robustness of the athlete?
All players are individual. I think for some players, strength is key. a lot of the time, but then functional strength, it is difficult. You'll always get some players that can play 60 games a season, and you'll get players that will pick up injuries. I think what we've got to get a bit better at is how we manage the loads throughout the year. I think with international games, international tournaments, some of these players aren't getting much of a break, and I think ultimately that's player welfare needs to be considered when we're looking at the fixtures and what they're playing, how we get their rest in when they need it, because they can't go at that same level 12 months of the year, 2 or 3 years on the bounce. And I think managing the expectations of the UEFA, the Premier League, or whatever league it is you're playing in, is really difficult. And we always used to say you need a good pre-season and need to help you become that little bit more robust and withstand the needs of the game during the season. But these players are coming in late into pre-season because they've had an international tournament, and they've had international games in the window when sometimes they've had 4 or 5 weeks off because their season finished in end of April. And it really is difficult. There's no, listen, if there was a right answer, we'd all be doing it. And that's the difficulty, is trying to manage the players' loads during the season, in the off-season, in periods in the international break. So it's international break next week. Some clubs will be letting the players have a few days off. Some will be in training. Some players will be away playing 2 games for the international, and they've not played 2 games in 3 days. It is difficult. That really is difficult when you throw everything into the mix and say, well, how are we managing that? It's not just, you can't just have one plan for everybody. You've got to have, each club's going to be going, right, well, they're flying to South America to play. They're flying to Asia to play. They're off to Europe, but they played 2 games in 3 days. That might have been a Thursday and a Sunday, or a Friday and a Monday, but somebody else might be playing a Saturday and a Tuesday, and we've got a game on a Friday night. So it really is difficult. And that's when you've got these big teams around, and the managers wanting, right, who've I got available. It's really important that there's that communication between the sports science, between the medical and the technical. This is what we've got, and that's the key, is that communication and that teamwork in that multidisciplinary team environment, and getting the best players on the pitch as often as you can.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's an absolute minefield, isn't it? And but then, like, you're in that silo to some extent, in that you're in elite international sport here. Like, what role do you play for working with the clubs, but also the players? Because I'm sure you've got the relationship with them.
Yeah, I think part of my roles and responsibilities is building them relationships with the teams. Because at the end of the day, we only borrow these players. First international week next week, and we're going to borrow these players when the season's not that old. It's only 2 or 3 weeks old, and it is difficult. And I know what a lot of the clubs will be thinking, that they'll be sat for the week thinking, what's going to happen on international camp? And it is difficult. And I sometimes get to put my club head on, and what would I be thinking if my players were away? And it is difficult. But the beauty for me is that I get a chance to work with these clubs. I see international duty as, I want to be able to continue what these players are doing at club level, because we're not going to be able to change them too much about what they do from a medical side of things, and we're only there to continue what they're doing at the clubs. So it's important that we've got them relationships with the clubs, and I can pick up a phone at any point during that camp during the week. So listen, there might be some issues, or they've picked up a knock during a game. But yeah, it's really important that we build them relationships with the clubs.
And in terms of the players, then, like, is it do they come in between international breaks? Or?
I've started taking a bit more time to offer that service to clubs that have got injured players, or international players that are injured a little bit on long-term injuries. So more recently, I've had Regan Poole from Portsmouth, who's an ACL. I've had Wayne Hennessy, who's picked up an injury at Nottingham Forest last season. We've had Joe Morell in this week, who's trying to get fit at Portsmouth again. So being able to offer that to the international players, I think, is important. I think it's good for them to get away from their club environment sometimes, particularly if it's a long-term injury. It's nice for them to hear different voices. But again, all I'm trying to do is offer continuity for what they'll be getting at the club, but just a different voice and a different environment, which I think is important that we can do that. I'm not going to change them. I'm not going to try and. The last thing I want to do is get a player and tell them that their club physio's doing X, Y, and Z, and I don't think that's right. Of course, they're going to ask my opinion, but it's important that we're, for the long-term benefit of that player, is that there's some common ground that we're sharing between the medical team at the club and what we're saying as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and like in between, as well as when you've not got players here, what are the other things? You're full-time here, so what do you do?
Yeah, we've got some medical courses that I oversee. I oversee anything medically within the domestic game if it's needed. That's not a big part of my responsibility. We're also the FAW. We are a FIFA Medical Centre of Excellence. So there's various responsibilities and things that we have to do to maintain that accreditation. We do some valuable work with universities around research, various different subjects at the moment. Hot topic as we're working with Exeter University regards concussion. We're working with Cardiff Met around female athletes and ACL injuries, which is a big topic. So I think that's really important. We've got some projects with SALT, which is Save a Life Cymru. One of the doctors here at the FAW, Len Laux, unfortunately lost his daughter to a cardiac arrest. And then obviously with Tom Lockyer, so we offer, throughout Wales, we offer a service where we'll go out and deliver BLS and AED training free of charge. So the clubs can get in contact with us. We've got a small grant from SALC, and then the players have also contributed to a small pot. So we can go and deliver, our tutors can go out and deliver to parents, to kids in the academies, and the players at clubs, and we'll put on a BLS kind of an AED session where we'll teach them the skills needed around cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
So little things like that, which are different to what I've been used to in the past, but again, equally as fulfilling. So I do less kind of clinical stuff, but it tends to be more managerial. Yeah, good, interesting. Love it.
I
love it. Yeah.
And then you've been in position a long time here now. What's the secret to longevity?
Keeping myself motivated. Listen, football's all I've ever been involved in as a player and from a medical side of things. So I realise I'm in a unique position having done that. There's not too many people that have done that. So football, I don't know any different. But again, is trying to keep with modern thinking, whether that's around medical equipment, whether that's modern thinking around development of rehabilitation processes and everything else, but just staying current, I think, is important. And staying current with the game as well. It's quite easy to think that, yes, I played in the 90s and the noughties, but I've got to understand what the modern game is demanding of the players. If I don't, then I'm not going to be able to get them fit and get them back to what they need. I understand the game's different, completely different to what it was when I was playing. So I need to understand that. And I often say that to young physios, is understand the environment that you're working in. You've got to understand what these players are turning out every week, whether that's from a data-driven analysis or from a physical data. You've got to understand that. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. And we were talking beforehand in that things do always change, but also a lot of stuff is very similar. Like from our side, the technology, there's always the latest tech that's out there. There's new data that you need. And sometimes it's just actually thinking, well, actually, what is going to be relevant? But the same with the human body is ultimately injuries.
Yeah, and I don't think that we're still at the same. You still look at looking at the epidemiological studies that are out there and what's happening in the game. It's still not changed. Fundamentally, we're still having the hamstring injuries. We're still having ankle injuries. We're still having quad injuries, groin injuries. They are the same injuries, and they are roughly still taking the same amount of time to repair, even though we seem to think that, are we better now or we've got more staff. you know, we're not getting them back. Nobody's, you know, doing anything groundbreaking, because if they were, we'd have all heard about it and we'd all be doing it and we'd all be getting them back after 5 days. I just think we're getting better at diagnostically diagnosing what these, you know, from a diagnostic point of view, we're getting better at saying what they are. We're getting better at understanding these injuries. But again, sometimes it's time, good rehabilitation. And as I said to the physios coming through, is just be very good at the fundamentals and what you're going to see. Be very good at hamstring, be very good doing ankles. You know, just be very good at those basic injuries that you're going to see.
Brilliant. Great. No, well, thank you for sharing it.
No problem.
Thank you for the average coffee upstairs.
Very average.
And yeah, good luck next week.
All right. Cheers, Andy.